Welcome to the Fence and Deck Mastery Podcast, where we discuss cutting-edge techniques, industry trends, and business insights to take your fence or deck company to the next level and dominate your competition. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Fence and Deck Mastery Podcast. I'm your host, Alex Danner, and I'm also the founder of Fence and Deck Marketers, which is a digital marketing agency that works exclusively with fencing and decking businesses. Today, I have a very exciting guest. I have John Lea from Decksouth, and you probably may have heard of John, or maybe you've seen his social media content. He has a big following in the deck industry. So, John, thank you for coming on here. How you doing today, man?
I'm good, Alex. Happy to be here, man. Thanks for asking me.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. And I think you've done quite a few projects, right? For the maybe the rich and famous. I know you did one for Lil Jon. Have you done any other celebrities or big projects like that?
Yeah, I mean, Jermaine Dupri, several of the Braves players. So
Nice.
we've had an opportunity to do some nice projects for some interesting folks, and we appreciate it, each and every one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've had quite a few talks, I guess, since I first did the webinar for Chris Breen. I don't know, however many months ago that was, but I'll say whenever we talk, it's of course we talk about business and stuff like that, but it's usually ends up going on some other topic, and we talk about anything from the craziness going on in the world, or talked about bow hunting, personal development, and honestly, just got to say, I really have enjoyed the talks. It's been great getting to know you, and just aside from all the decking side that you have, all the experience you have, all the cool stuff you're doing at Decksouth, it's been great getting to know you as well, and I guess getting to know the man behind the company has been cool too. So I really was excited for this, having you come on here and kind of not only share your experience that way, but well, I think you're going to have a lot of things to say that our listeners are really going to hopefully be able to help apply to their business and help their business grow. So, John, if you wouldn't mind, just kind of tell me a little bit, introduce yourself a little bit, your story, your history in the decking industry, a little bit about Decksouth as well. That'd be great.
Yeah. First and foremost, man, thank you for that intro. And
No
it's
problem.
always my pleasure talking to you, Alex. Since the first time I met you, we resonated. So I appreciate that a lot. So my name is John Lea. Decksouth is a company that I started back in '98. We're a design build company that focuses on outdoor living. I'm a licensed general contractor here in Georgia, but our focus is primarily the backyard. It's evolved over the years. In the beginning, it was one deck at a time, right? That's where it started. Thus the name Decksouth. It's grown into all things backyards, and this is our 26th year in business, and we're honored to still be here in the metro Atlanta area and service our clients. But we feel like our job is to change lives. That's really where we are now. That's our metric that we talk about on Tuesday mornings. And so by providing, and quite honestly, that came from the feedback of a client back in 2014, realizing that we changed the way they live in their backyard. So for us, the why is what I would like to say is a deeper why that keeps us going every day to actually do something different, change lives for our clients, and so that's our focus. And I could speak on that for a long time, but that's basically it in a nutshell.
Gotcha. Yeah, I remember we talked about that a little bit last time. You were saying, I guess it was along the lines of getting people more outside, enjoying the outdoors. Yeah, and I think you have many stories about that, like you were saying, as far as like changing lives and things. But is that kind of like the summary, getting people outside, the fresh air and not cooped up all the time, mental health wise, improving that?
Yeah, man, there's actually a term for it. A biophilic design. It's real big in the world of architecture, and it's the short of it is the love of nature, bringing the outdoors in. And for all of us that do what we do, and there's so many guys and girls in our industry, coast to coast, that do a really good job designing and building. Our job isn't to bring the outdoors in. is to bring our clients outdoors. And so I think after COVID, what happened was the realization that being outside offered massive value. From lowering blood pressure to serotonin spiking to, getting in the sunlight, seeing fractal patterns, being outside in nature, breathing fresh air. A deck is no more just a utilitarian square box. It's got a grill in it. It's actually a place to exist, and lives are improved because of it. And I think it took COVID and the lockdown to really kind of hammer that home, so to speak. No pun intended there. And so I was actually on a podcast where I was introduced to the biophilic design, and I was telling the story of a client, Jim Keen, saying, John, how are things going? I said, well, we're not out here saving lives. And he goes, hey man, maybe not, but you do change lives. And let me tell you what I mean. And I was sharing that story on the podcast, and the gentleman stopped me and said, hey, even though he doesn't know what he's telling you, and you may not know what he's telling you, when he says that's his happy place and it's changing, he's talking about the biophilic nature, the biophilic idea of being in nature, being outside, and that design really resonated with him. And it goes much deeper, right, into all kinds of, prospect and refuge and all different terms inside the biophilic movement, where, how does the project look from your main window coming out? Right? Like, is there symmetry? Is there asymmetry, depending on what kind of brain type you have? So there's all kinds of stuff there. And I think, at least for me personally, it's a new level of, hey, why do we do this? Why do we get up every morning, put our boots on, and go after it? There's more to it than just putting numbers on the board. There's more to it than just, revenue and P&L reports and all that. But it's actually doing something that matters, right? Doing something that sticks and changes lives. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I love that too. Especially like you said in COVID when everyone was cooped up and couldn't
yeah,
even leave the house. So I mean, I've never had to be, I guess, convinced, even though I'm behind a computer all day, like going outside and hanging out on my deck. And you've seen it, even though it doesn't, it's very pales in comparison to what you guys build. But I love hanging out there and shooting my bow, that kind of stuff.
I was
Um,
gonna say I've seen photos. I've seen your story where you've got your bow laying there in the backyard.
yeah,
I see you.
yeah, yeah. All right. Well, as far as Decksouth goes, you already talked about how long you've been in business, but you talk about, revenue wise, truck wise, the size of the company, kind of what you've grown it to. And even though we were talking about it's not all about numbers, but I think that does motivate a lot of people, especially ones that are aspiring to be, a Decksouth and, kind of get to the level that you're at. Would you mind elaborating on that a little bit?
Sure, sure. Yeah, so we hover right around 6 million. We've been above that. We've certainly been below it. We feel like that's a good spot for us to service our clients well. We run 5 projects at a time. Sometimes that breaks down into 3 at a time, because like earlier this year when we had a state of the company meeting, there's 52 of us sitting in a room, right? A third of those are W-2, 2/3 of those are 1099. But we don't have anyone that's really been with us less than, I think the newbie's been with us about 7 years. I've got a gentleman that's
Wow.
been with us 24 years.
Wow.
17, 16, 14, right? So the 1099s that we have, the sub crews, yeah, they'll go do a job for someone else, but they're highly entrenched in what we do. They believe in the cause. They're a big part of our company, and so we can, whether it's 5 jobs at a time, 3, whatever. It's all based on what the workflow looks like at that moment, right? We could have smaller jobs going on, or we could have jobs that really take multiple trades at the same time, completing what we've designed and what we're building for the client. Um, so, in that we've got a couple of delivery trucks. Well, we did. One of them was stolen last week, and a whole
Oh,
nother
geez.
topic of conversation. We've got, multiple trucks out there running, with each crew, trailers and all that stuff. So anyway, yeah, and it's not always been that way, right? When I started, my first employee, Marcelino Rincon, is still with me now.
Nice.
When I hired him, his son George was five, 6, something like that. He'd show up on Saturdays, help us, pick up nails or whatever. George is our project manager now, and
Oh, wow. Nice.
He's one of the youngest guys in the company, but yet he's been on the jobs as long as anybody and longer than most. So I take massive pride in that. When he came back from college and said he wanted to do this full time, it was um, one of the biggest personal victories that I felt. Um, it was important to hear that.
Yeah.
And so I feel like we're building things that go past us just punching a clock and collecting a check. And by a second generation coming through and confirming that it's a place that he would want to work is
Yeah.
checked a big box, at least personally for me. But
That's huge. I mean, that was probably lasting his memory, all those years just working with you guys and, helping out or whatever. I mean, it must have had a big lasting imprint just, being along with his dad, with you, with all the other guys. That's really cool, especially 20, was it 20 years later? That's, I guess, from the
yeah,
first experience. Yeah.
yeah, man.
Um,
And I think sometimes is because I've always said as deck builders, as outdoor living professionals, we're 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 professional problem solvers, right? Some days we get out there and that's, you're in the weeds and in commercial construction, you manage the job. In residential construction, you manage the client along with the job. So a lot of that is expectation levels and all that kind of stuff. And so as we get in the weeds, just working through it, you sometimes you forget to kind of stop and step back and look around and go, are we doing something special here? And so when you have someone like that say, hey, I want to be a part of that. I went off to school. I gave it a shot, and that's not. I want to do this.
yeah.
It's like, wow, maybe we are doing some things here that um, you know I, we need to be proud of. And so I know that might sound cliche-ish, but I think all of us can slow down sometimes and take a step back and look at what we're doing and appreciate where we are.
Yeah. I think everybody has that problem. You're just always fighting for the next thing or moving on to the next thing, whatever it may be. And definitely, especially if you're, I guess, ambitious person, it's hard to step back and realize what you have, if you're just constantly thinking about your next goal. But
Well,
uh,
yeah, I mean, you know this. We've talked about it. Like you set a goal, right? And you go to work. By the time you get to that goal, you've already reset that goal. That goalpost keeps moving, right? So you're
yeah,
constantly moving to try to catch that goalpost. And I think anybody that um, is wanting more for themselves, their family, their business, whatever. I think we all do that.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, since maybe the time when he first started, when he first started the business, I'm just curious because we're seeing a lot of different changes in the industry this year because the COVID years where everybody was killing it, making money, enough work for everybody. It's slowed down a little bit this year. It's been a little bit harder. So, but I'm just curious what you think, I guess, since your entire duration in the deck industry, have you noticed any big changes, maybe like the ones we're experiencing this year, or I don't know, anything that really stands out in the past, 20, 25 years?
Yeah. So I, maybe I shouldn't admit this, but I don't focus on a whole lot of the peripheral stuff. We kind of stay in our lane and really just focus on where we're going. For us personally in the business, things have changed, right? So the size of the project, the scope of the project, all of that's changed as we I call it eating at a different table, right? Like I can go eat at that table and service those clients as best I can. And then there's the other table over here that's got a larger project. And so as we eat at those different tables and we service those clients and what they need, because at the end of the day, it's what that's what it is, right? We're servicing a need. Some would say, oh, $250,000, $500,000, whatever backyard is not a need is shingles and tires and toilet paper. It's
Yeah,
all a need, right? Everybody has different needs, right? So for us, we were servicing a need years ago that has evolved into a different category now. Um, by doing that, I think that economy fluctuation up and down affects that client a little less. I think it still affects everyone, but maybe the budget was here and now the budget backs up a little bit because of what's
yeah,
going on, but the project doesn't disappear altogether. Whereas in the past, like when we went through 08, 09 recession, right, everything just boom, stopped. At that point, I think our largest deck at that time was in the high 70s, maybe touched the 80s, and great, awesome. but it was still a different project compared to what we take on today. Um, so yeah, I think I think what I've seen is the ability for us to, because we still build those smaller decks as good as anyone, and we're very proud of it. We don't seem to get those projects as much. Sometimes I miss those days, but with the larger projects, you seem to be servicing a different need, and so I don't think that client is quite as affected by the volatility of the marketplace as maybe a different size project with a different client would be.
Yeah. Yeah, that definitely makes sense, and something we've seen cross with our clients, the ones that are going after I guess the people that have the money, in the affluent neighborhoods, they're the ones that tend to still have money no matter what the, what the economy is doing. And, like you said, might be a little bit less, but the money's still there and, they're still able to afford it. But,
Well, yeah, and
um,
Alex, let me say this real quick. I
sure.
don't want I don't want that to be misconstrued that one's better than the other because it's not.
Yeah.
Like the model of a rinse and repeat model of a more simplistic build that gets you in and out, in and out, in and out. There's beauty in that. It simply is, I think, a project that can be affected quicker by the ups and downs of the marketplace. There's some amazing companies out there that stay in their lane and rinse and repeat and put up big numbers and do great things. Um, I my experience is that project has a bigger gets affected in a larger way by the marketplace.
Yeah. It's so funny you say that because I've had that conversation many times. And a lot of the clients that we have, I would say that are your size or up there, 4+ million. There are a lot of them that like the rinse and repeat. And then there's some that, like yourself, that really like these nice, huge projects, the big 100,000, 200, whatever. So I've said that to, I can't remember who I was talking about, but I was like, it would be really cool to just get somebody, a bunch of guys on the stage that are just like so gung ho about one way versus the other and kind of see the debate, I guess, because I've heard people swear one way and then I've heard them swear the other way. And, me, I'm not a contractor. I just listen and learn from you guys. But it's just interesting, I guess I would almost think that companies of a certain size would all be thinking the same way, but it's really not the case at all. There's everybody, I guess, finds a way, whatever's best for them and whatever they like doing seems to be the real reason behind it. Um,
Yeah, and again, I don't think there's not a right and wrong, right? I mean,
yeah,
there isn't. I think it goes to where you feel your niche is, where you feel your value add is to your client. For us, these large projects that they're more than houses, right? Four,
yeah,
five, six, 700,000. They've got multiple projects inside the project, right? You've got the deck and the porch, which is its own build, then the patio, then the pool, then the kitchen, then a big wall around the back, right? So then the turf, and so there's projects inside projects. From a management standpoint, we can stand still. We can stand still for a longer period of time and manage things instead of moving constantly. But on the flip side of that, you're showing up at the same job for not days or weeks, but months at a time. So
yeah,
there's things, we've brought food trucks at the end of a project for the last couple of weeks just to keep that motivation going, at lunch, because it can get to the point where you're like, okay, man, we're at that finish line. Let's push through,
yeah,
and those projects can be kind of lengthy. So no right or wrong, good or bad. It's just different lanes, right? Different lanes on the
yeah.
interstate, different tables to sit at, different approaches to business.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And kind of because your projects are so involved, you're installing pools as well. I mean, anything that's in a backyard, you guys can install. So, or I'm sure it seems like anything, but I'm just kind of curious, like the quality control, because I struggle with this with my business. As you grow, as you need to train and hire, things like that. I mean, what do you do to make sure? Well, maybe this will be an earlier days question because everybody's pretty seasoned on your team. But when you were bringing in more people, that you had to train and get up to speed, how would you go about keeping that quality control stout? I guess.
Yeah, it's a great question. So you mentioned the pool on the pool side. So we've got Pool South. That's another standalone business that we service our clients that just want a pool in that regard. or if it's a full-blown backyard, obviously Pool South and Decksouth collaborate together. But so for the quality control, I've always been a real big proponent in hiring from within, training from within. So, bringing someone, pulling them off a crew that is ready to go, a really good number two guy that's really ready to go be a number one lead, and then pulling others up underneath them. There's been times over the years where there have been subs that um, love running their business the way they run it and end up going, you know what, I'm just going to come on board with you guys, and so sometimes that can be a tough one because they do things their own way and they don't quite fit in the mold. So you got to make sure you're like, of course, you got to make sure you've got the right ones. But um, I think sharing the message and sharing it often is, you put. I think the best thing that my grandfather taught me when I was a kid is put people around you that are more talented, and it helps you do things better, right? And so that's the one thing I tell clients all the time. I'm my worst part of the business. If you can get past me, everybody behind me is great, because I do have a phenomenal team around me, and so I think that's as important as anything, having the right people. Um, in doing that, if I'm not vocal in sharing the message and sharing the dream and sharing where we need to be, and we don't stay accountable to that, because the QC is going to, some days it's going to be rock solid, some weeks, some months, and then every now and again there's going to be some things that dip below that. So as long as we've got a system in place to stay accountable, whether it be the checkpoints that the project managers show up and look through, whether it be what the leads follow, whether it be what I follow when I get on site, right? And so we use technology, certainly, everything from, company cam to job tread. We design all of our stuff in SketchUp and render it in a few different softwares. But so we start with the design and really want to try to hit on all items of what that project's going to look like, and then follow suit with the build. But inside of that, all the QC, we really lean on our internal processes to try to keep that where it's at.
And would you say, like from a business like mine, like checklists are huge, so that way if somebody comes in, they have to do a new job. Example, I just hired someone, and like you said, you don't know what kind of experience they have or how they do things, and people can be kind of stubborn in their ways. But if you have like this list, I give it to them and I'm like, follow this, like this is what, if all of these are checked off, then we're good. Is that something similar to how you would do it for your industry, to be like when you get on the project or on the job, you have something to look through or something that you could pass on to your number two or the guys below him? I mean, is there anything like that to kind of make sure all boxes are checked, I guess?
Yeah, man, you're dead on. Call it SOPs, call it a
Yep.
playbook, which is what we call it.
Yeah,
Like
us too.
it's just
Yeah.
it's just simply a playbook that, hey, man, this is, take it to sports, right? Like if everyone's not looking at the same play, working from that same play, then there's chaos out on the field. And so same thing in business, right? I think sometimes we can almost over analyze it. And Michael Gerber, E-Myth, I read that book years ago, and he talks about have a standing operating procedure for everything. The way you lock the door, the way you turn the lights off, the way, and so a lot of it seems super simple, and why waste our time on that? But I think as humans, if we understand what's expected of us, then we can thrive in that zone, right?
Yep.
And so I'm real careful to tell my guys, hey, it's not exactly like, you don't have to go step one, step two, step three. It's got to be this way every time. There's a playbook and there's steps and you can follow it, but there's also a big picture here. And so if you decide that you're going to do one and then three and then come back to two and four because of the site specific things, because of the material getting delivered, great. We just know at the end of when we're out of here, this has got to be, all these boxes have to be checked. So
Yeah.
that's the way I always responded best with coaches and with mentors and with the few bosses that I had out of school. And so, instead of like being real, you got to do it this way. It's more about painting the picture, having a playbook to follow, and then letting me, and in this regard, letting them do their best inside that.
Yeah, and that's something I learned pretty recently. Like we always had SOPs, but like you said, and what I heard and what we call it is definition of done. So like you have that checklist at the end, like you can do things differently, but like once this is done, these are the things that have to be like signed off, completed, and as long as that's done, then you're good. But I guess the order, like you were saying, it doesn't always matter. It just as long
Yeah,
as it's done, completed, I guess.
yeah, DOD definition of done, right? So, I mean, certainly some order matters, right? But there's some gray areas where guys might like to do this before that, and that's okay, right? It's not absolute, and I find that there's better reaction and better buy-in with that mentality and that approach.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. Okay, so with the success of Decksouth and your experience in the industry, it's probably hard to pinpoint specific ones if you had to give like a top three, but I guess do your best. What do you think has, I guess, the top three things that come to mind for the success of Decksouth? Like if you were like, this really moved the needle, this was really what we started to notice, like, started making huge strides and that kind of thing.
Mm. Yeah, and some of this may again sound cliche-ish, but I mean, right away I got to start with you've got to have the right people in the right seats on the bus, right? And that's sometimes hard to finally figure out. You may have a real talented person, but they're not actually in the right seat on the bus, and so making sure that that's there is super important. And we got real clear on that. That helped with where we were going. Um, Three things. I would say a second one would be years ago when I decided, hey, the projects that I want to design and the projects that we want to build, we're going to have to be able to design these because as I paint a picture and talk to Mr. Homeowner and say, we'll do this over here. And if you look here, it's kind of like this handrail, but not really. And it's kind of like that deck board, but not exactly. And the stairs will look somewhat like this. But if you can imagine, they flip and people are staring at you like, I think I understand what you're talking about, right? And so I realized years ago when I turned and looked at the interior remodeling business, at least in this area, some of them have leaned into a really nice design build approach. And that's when it hit me that that's what we needed to do. And so we got real serious about that back in 16 or so, 17. And before that, it was just, the way I learned was, by a piece of vellum, using a scale. It's got to fit on paper, else it's not going to fit in the backyard. But I used to, hold it and be like, if you squint, it's kind of in 3D. Like I mean, it's still hard for people to see a 2D and imagine it, what it's really going to look like coming together. So what really helped us in being able to find the right clients, find the right projects, is to be able to realistically show them what the project looks like. Not kind of, sort of, maybe, but realistically, from grain pattern of deck board, from trim detail, from exact handrail. And SketchUp's allowed us to do that. And so we're real serious about the design build side. That's definitely a big one for us. Rob Hodachek's our lead designer, and when he came on board about 5 years ago, that was a big step for us. Prior to that, I'd lean on him for a little bit of advice here and there, and finally it worked out where we could come together. And so yeah, that's a big one. A third one, I
If
don't know.
there's,
Let me think about. Let me
yeah, I was
think.
about
Let
to
me
say,
think about that a second.
yeah, no worries. It doesn't have to be three either. I mean, if those are the main ones, that's perfectly fine. Um, okay, so I think you have about 20,000 followers on Instagram. So a lot of people are seeing the posts that you do, and all the ones that I see, the projects look cool, of course, but the company culture, kind of the internal scenes, you guys at the conference table or whatever, it definitely seems like a really strong culture. So is there anything that you're doing, to build that culture in the past or things that you do, um, I guess, continuously to make sure the culture is strong and people continually are happy to work with you?
Yeah, it's a good question, man. Someone recently asked about um, our team, how long people have been with us, and I was sharing, and they're like, "Wow, you don't have a lot of turnover. You must be a good boss." And I was like, I don't know. Yes, I'm the one that started the party. I've been at the party the longest, but I don't see myself as the boss. I just see myself as a team member, and so I try to treat others like I would like to be treated. And listen, I fail at that all the time. There's no doubt about it. But I think the one thing that my team members know is I give the shirt off my back for them. I'd walk through a wall for them, And I think that probably comes through in the way I go about stuff. Maybe sometimes it could be a little bit too intense here or there, whatever. But it's I try to be real authentic. When I do fail, I try to man up to it. Ask the same of them. We have weekly meetings where we do a whole lot more than just look at our our KPIs and our metrics and where we are. I mean, it's the closest. I was laughing the other day. I'm like, this is like a book. We read book. We all share a book at the same time, right? We're all reading a
Nice.
book at the same time. And so having some of that feedback and talking about, things that go on personally at home and really giving a crap about it, right? Like actually giving a flip about what goes on in their life is important. And so um, there's so much more to life than just work. You gotta actually enjoy it, I think, to be able to come to the table and offer the value that you can offer. So I hope that's what we do. I think that's what we do. I think that's where our culture comes from. I hate to admit it, but our company values, our core values, just recently got painted on the wall, and for so many years we had them, we talked about them, but it finally hit that, hey, let's put them on the wall and let's really, and I've had a few clients, comment about them. And so um, I'd like to think that we did that year number two. It took many more years to do that. So if I had it to do over again, I would have done a few things differently to get a little more buy-in earlier. But and it's like the saying, the rent's due every day, right? Like you've got to keep doing things every day to make sure that um, that the company's clipping away the way that you want it to.
Yeah, it sounds like you're doing other, great things for them. Like you said, the food trucks, and you're taking care of them in ways like that. Little things that go a long way, I guess, to make sure everyone's happy and I guess can recharge a little bit, after a grueling long day.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
okay. Well, want to touch on the sales process a little bit to kind of see the difference maybe between yours and somebody else's. So maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But I mean, how do you typically go about the sales process with your projects? I mean, I guess from lead to, completion, like what is your process?
yeah. So we may be a little different than others. Not sure, but we try to make sure that we have successful touches, at least two or three of them before any of us actually meet the client. So call comes in, inquiry comes in on the website, right? So we then set up what we call a feasibility call. We tell them, what time we're going to call them, and we stick to that. It absolutely happens. And so by the time they have that conversation, they've been touched twice by someone in the team. And in that feasibility call, we learn as much as we can about them, their family, what they want to do, the goals, short term, long term, about the build, to determine if it's a good fit. We truly are interviewing them as much as they interview us, and and that's not braggadocious. That's simply we need to understand if we can't knock it out of the park for them, if we can't hit a home run for them for some reason, then we really shouldn't even engage, and then we should possibly help them find somebody that can do what they want to do. So the feasibility call happens. In that call, we explain our design build process. We also talk about there's a fee for that design build process, and here's why we are a design build company. At that point, those that want to engage in that design build, they go ahead and commit to that through our design agreement. And then we set up an on-site call and we meet with them and we get busy finding a design, creating a design that they resonate with. Yes, ultimately we want the build, but first step is creating a design that their family, Mr. and Mrs., the family looks at and goes, that's what I want right there. That's it. I couldn't quite figure it out, but that's what I want, right? Then when we've done that, hopefully we've earned their trust. They enjoy that process and the estimate that couples that design, they're ready to lean into that and let us build what we've designed for them. That's not 100% what happens on every lead, right? There's some that don't feel they need a design. So we still will meet with them and discuss the fact that even though they don't see the value in the design, it doesn't change the fact that we're a design build company. We do what we do, and whether they see the value in it or not, we still stick with our process. So we'll go meet with them and talk budget stuff and whatever, but we don't engage in what I feel like is our best foot forward, which is the design build side of things. So a lot of times those on-site visits do end up in a design agreement where they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense now. Let's move forward in that. But we always try to move forward with a real professional approach to show them what we can build. I call it the emotional buy-in, right? People go, oh, a $50,000 deck, a $500,000 backyard. It's not emotional buy. It absolutely is an emotional buy.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a new car scenario, right? It's probably why a lot of the car dealerships are like, hey, go ahead and take it home overnight. We'll probably happens a little less now than it used to, but it's the emotional buy-in, right? So once they can see it, they tend to find a way to make it become a reality in their life, whatever that means from a financial standpoint, scheduling standpoint, whatever. And a lot of our projects are phased, right? So we'll come in and we'll design something that's a full backyard, and their 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 desire and their budget are two different things. They can get to that budget, but it's going to take a couple years, whatever it is. And so then we phase it out. So we talk about, okay, let's go ahead and do this part of the project now, knowing that this is the master build that's going to be here 3 years from now. Let's do this and stop here. So next year when you call us, we can pick up here and go there without having to
Nice.
tear up, one step forward, two steps back. And when that started for us back in 17 or 18, our first phase approach, I was like, I wonder if they're ever really going to call us back, right? It's always a gamble. Like, are they really going to? And sure enough, they did, and it just kind of picked up from there. So that is a part of our business, is a phased out approach of these builds, because the client knows they want a full blown backyard, but it's going to take them whatever, a couple years to get there. So that's a part of our business too. I know I'm kind of a long answer to your short question, but so our sales approach is, in the past, years ago, early 2000s, the phone would ring and it would be like, okay, I'll be there in 2 hours, right? Like, you want a deck? All right, I'm on my way, right? And so you're just throwing as much as you can against the wall and see what sticks, so to speak, is how I describe that. That process is not ours or anywhere close to what we do today. And I feel like we service our clients better that way.
Yeah. And I'm really curious. So I had a couple questions that popped up in my head. The design side, especially because you were saying some people don't like it. But that's your process. That's part of your SOPs, your playbooks.
Mhm.
Do you do that just because, is it because you've had problems in the past with like what expectations were and what actually was created, and people were like, this is not what I had in my head, and you were like, well, we didn't do a design, this is what we, like, not giving them a clear picture and just had problems? Or is it just because you want to make sure your team is clear on it? I mean, any particular reason why you go about it that way?
Yeah, good question. More of the second. I can't say that there hasn't been misinterpretations in the past, but nothing that was a critical point that's like, okay, now we're going to completely change gears. It was more along the lines of, if it's also a vetting process, to be quite honest, right? So if clients are willing to pay a small fee to go into a design that's a fraction of the cost of the overall build, then we know they're serious, right? We
Yeah.
know that we can engage with them and give them our best foot forward, and we can come to the table with a lot of value add. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not going to have the conversations with those that don't believe in the design build process, but we've done this before where someone says, I just don't feel like I want to pay for a design because company A, B, and C came out and they gave me, an estimate. And it's like, okay, so how many posts you got at the house since you have a brick house? Oh, I don't know. Okay, so what's the post spread? As you're looking out of that main, you've got a pool table there and a nice big basement window. When you look out, are you gonna be looking at posts? Is that what the other guys are quote? Oh, I don't know. Why don't you know? Well, there's not a design. There's just a Word document that's an estimate. Oh, okay. Well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to put a design together for you because we're going to stick with what we are, design build. I'm not going to give you the design, but come on by the office. I'll show it to you, and I'll hand you the estimate that goes with it. So you can answer all your questions by looking at this, and here's the estimate. So it's not how we do it very often, but that has happened. And so it's not necessarily to force them into a place that they don't want to be. It's to actually guide them into what we feel like is a successful place that they want to be. Because if they're really serious about the build, unless it's simply just a 12 by 12 square deck to throw a grill on, there's a lot of interpretations of what can be built. And it's funny. I look back on it and I'm like, how in the world were we doing this back in the early 2000s without, and even up into the recession without full-blown designs. So without a design, it also keeps the project more simplistic, right? And I think there's things that happen during the build, like, oh, and all of a sudden you find them adding. They add a patio that's bigger than just a landing that turns into stairs that go around to their basement door. They add more light, and so all of a sudden there's things that you slow down and have to talk about during the build because it was never fleshed out during the design phase. And so I think I know to get to that end result, the most efficient way is a full-blown design.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that makes complete sense. And then, once the process is done, I mean, or maybe during the build process, is there anything you're doing to like, improve customer loyalty, or long-term relationships after? I mean, is there anything during the process or after that you do to kind of nurture that relationship or try to get more referrals, things like that?
Yeah, so the one thing that you'll never hear our clients say is that we don't communicate. We've got a daily communication process with our clients. And sometimes it's simply, hey, nothing's changed. We're waiting on the inspection. Have a great day. But most of the time, it's letting them know exactly what's happening that day or the next day, what selections still haven't been made that need to be made. And so I've never in 26 years ever heard a client say, you know what, you guys just communicate way too much. I really wish you'd like back off the communication, right? So, so we learned that, over communicating is really where it's at because as humans, we want to know what's expected of us, what's going to happen. And, typically we become friends with our clients, to be honest with you, Alex, like that's the truth of it. But we're still strangers at the beginning of this. And to let strangers in your backyard for weeks and months at a time can be a little bit stressful. I mean, I read an article years ago that said the number one time for divorce papers to be filed is during a remodeling project, either home
Really?
construction or remodeling. Yeah. And
Huh.
so I kid with my clients sometimes when we get to the end of it. I'm like, unless you guys have filed for divorce, you haven't, right? Okay, well then you're winning over, so when you think about that, like, I mean, if you really sit back and think about that, that shows the level of stress that a client can take on with selections with uh, he thinks one thing, she thinks another. He wants one thing, she wants another, and it's just another layer of stress on top of the daily grind of life, their own business, their family, their whatever. So we try to make that as simple as possible by over communicating, and we hope that in that process, at the end of it, they're willing to say, hey, yeah, these guys did what they said they're going to do. I would hire them again. I've got a client that this morning said, hey, I'd like to talk to a few references. And I picked up the phone on the way to work and called a few of them. And they're like, absolutely. Let me know. When can so having that relationship is important. And I think where that comes from is setting the expectations early, communicating those expectations early, and then adhering to that because it's construction, right? It's not always going to be perfect. And when it's not, whether it's weather, material procurement, an inspection, inadequate soil that requires helix, whatever it is, we take the ledger board off and there's rot at the house. Now we got to approach that, right? I mean, we're not building a new deck on a section of the house that's got rot. So in construction, there's always things that pop up. And so I feel like if we earn their trust early through communication, through being authentic with things, then we can get into this relationship that allows us both in a collaborative effort to build something really special in their backyard. And at
Yeah.
the end of it, we ask them for a referral. We ask them, are you happy? We have our own little internal, let us know what you think. How could we have improved? What did we do right? What did we do wrong? Try to learn from it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. Well, since marketing's kind of my ordeal, I got to ask you a little bit about that too. Get into the marketing side. I already know that you're doing social media. How long have you been taking that so serious? Been doing. I'm not sure exactly how often you post, but it seems like many times a week at least. But when did you start doing that?
Yeah, we try to post a couple times a week at least. Sometimes we've got more content to share, so it becomes, more frequent. But One of my guys set up our Instagram account, I think in 16 or 17, and I'm like, Instagram, what's that? Right? Like um, uh, it was just a placeholder at the time. I don't remember what year it was, but I was leaving a client's house and Mr. Homeowner said, John, she just wants to be on your social media page, your Instagram page. I'm like, oh, you follow us? And she's like, oh, yeah. And at that time, we had had a few hundred followers, I think. So I came back to the office and I said, hey, guys, whatever we're doing there, let's throttle down, like whatever we need to do. Because I'm I'm old school, right? I'm of the age that in late 90s, early 2000s, I'm paying Ma Bell. I'm paying for a $35,000 ad in a phone book, in the early 2000s to try to
Yeah.
get the daggone phone to ring, So we've come 180 degrees from that, and so to finally realize, and there's so many in the industry that are much better at it than I am and we are, but to finally realize that there's a client that's watching us on social media um, was a revelation to me that, hey, we need to really lean into that. And some of my team members are like, yeah, glad you finally got there. But what it allows us, our website for so many phases of the business up and down, different websites we've had are static, and in today's world, I'm not even sure that a lot of people lean on that as much as you'd think they do. A lot of them seem to be going to social media, and I think one reason is it kind of shows the personality of the company, right? I mean, I think you can pick up in more real time what the company's about, how they carry themselves, you know, um, how they show off their projects, how they share what's going on, whether it's because some just show the end result. We like to try
Mhm.
to show from the start to finish a little bit more of the process than just the what we call beauty shots. And I don't think there's any right or wrong way of doing either one of them. It's just our approach. And so that's kind of where we are right now is trying to do our best to just let people know what we do. And if they ever in need of what we do, here we are. Give us a call.
Yep. I know we've talked about like the digital side. Obviously, you have a website, not doing much of the SEO side and the ad side. So right now, it sounds like obviously the website, social media, those are the main types of marketing. Are you doing anything else like offline marketing or maybe anything online I'm forgetting?
Yeah, so we've started paid ads on social media that we're playing with a little bit. We're starting to lean into some Google Ads stuff that we haven't done in the past, the SEO stuff that we weren't doing a real good job at that we need to be better at. The business so many years ago was predicated on more print marketing. And so I was always a big fan of direct mailers that were to the client, not just homeowner, but actually have, you know, the name of the homeowner. And an exclusive pack that you open up and there's hard copies. We've done some of that recently. It doesn't hit like it used to. That's been our feedback in the last few years. Reverse back to many, many years ago, it was a big part of the business. I remember a client, we built a very large project for him, and I'm in his home office in his basement. He goes, John, he reaches over next to his screen. He goes, I've had this for 2 years. I got it in the mail, and I'm finally calling you. And I was like, wow, that thing had shelf life. So
Yeah.
I think that still works in some markets. We've been doing a little bit of that, but it does not have the response that social media does, and certainly, as you know, SEO websites. So we can do a better job at that. We know that, but it is something that we are working on.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, what percentage would you say is referrals anyways? I mean, are most of the people that you come to, are they just reaching out to you because they heard of friend or family?
The last time we looked, we were low 70% referrals, high
Nice.
60, low 70%. So I'd love that to be 10 out of 10. But and I imagine there's times that we would look back at the end of the year and that number could be lower. But again, when you're at it for 26 years, 25 and a half years now, you'd hope that there's enough projects out there where clients are like, hey, you should call them, or maybe it's not a referral, maybe it's not a family member referral, but it's, hey, I drove by your permit box that says Decksouth. in my neighborhood, and I can see the corner of that project, and it looked awesome 2 years ago. So we're calling you. I mean, we still consider that a referral because they saw us in their neighborhood, 2 years prior. So you'd like to, I'd like that to be 10 out of 10, but it's not there yet.
Yeah. When you say, sorry, I'm a little confused. When you say 10 out of 10, you mean like 10, like getting a referral for 10 out of 10 past
Yeah, I
clients?
mean, like, yeah, we get 10 leads and they're all from referrals. It's like woohoo,
Gotcha.
right? I mean, that's
Yeah. Yeah.
great. So we'd love for every referral, every lead to be a referral, but I also know that that's just not realistic. So
Yeah. Yeah. Do you do anything with emails, like send out emails to past customers, anything like that?
we do drip campaigns that we started a few years ago where we'll look back over the year and say, okay, they engaged to a certain point and then just kind of ghosted us, fell off the, whatever. And so we reach back out to them and send emails. And that does drum up some business. People that we did a design for 3 years ago were like, hey, it's been sitting here. I want to do it. It's just thanks for sending the email. And so that gets the conversation going again. So we do that as well.
Okay. All right. Well, there's a lot of deck builders that listen to this, and I'm sure a lot of them already know you. And I know you do a lot of speaking engagements, and I'll see you at Deck Expo as well. I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
But is there any advice you could give to someone that's, maybe they're established, as well. They're just not at the size you are, or maybe just even someone that's just getting started, making less than a half a million a year, and building decks, or only been in business for a couple of years. Is there any advice you could give to someone like that to help get to that next level, or build a company like you have?
And it's still humbling to hear that. And I appreciate you saying that. If we've done anything right, I think we've learned from mistakes. I told somebody this. I might not be able to tell you what to do, but I can certainly tell you what not to do. We've messed up enough times to know don't do that. Um, I think the mistake that we can make in today's world is we can look at something and go, that looks great. I want to be that, right? And social media doesn't always show the full picture of things, right? Like some people think, oh, you
Oh
guys
yeah.
have everything together. And there's some days I feel like we're chickens or their heads cut off around here, right? And so I think the most important thing is be curious. That's what I tell my son. Like in curiosity is where the sweetness of life is, right? Like stay curious. Always, try to push the envelope a little bit, but push your envelope. Like there is no right or wrong. There were times, there's been times of our business we were running 10 or 12 crews. For us, we decided that's not where we need to be. And so is it right to run two crews? Is it right to run it it's different for everyone, right? And so I think that the most important thing is what 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 keeps you going, what's your value add to your client, and what's going to make them continue to call you back, right? Um, Through referrals or whatever. And so I think finding that lane would be the advice I'd get. Find the lane that's good for you and then stay curious, whether it's pick up the phone and call somebody that's been there longer than you and bend in an ear. I always love those conversations, to be honest with you, because it takes me back to a time that I remember I remember at one of the very first deck expos in the early 2000s. There's a gentleman by the name of Tom Jakes. He owns Hickory Dickory Decks up in Canada. He's a phenomenal man. I haven't talked to him in years, but um, he probably was wondering why I was walking around and just hanging on everything that he said. And there were a few other guys with him, George Drummond at Casa Decks, a few others that were, and eating lunch, eating dinner, just being curious and hearing how they had their conversations and what they were doing. And that was back before social media, and so I couldn't pick up stuff that way. I think just being curious about what's out there, and then finding that lane for you, right? And that lane can change, right? That's okay. It can change, but don't look at something and just go after it without a game plan. I've heard it said this way before: success leaves clues, and I think that's true, but so does failure. Failure leaves clues too, and so I think you can learn from both sides of that coin. Um, and and that would probably be what I would say.
Yeah. I really like what you said in the beginning, that it's social media is like the perfect example of the highlight reel, you know. It's so easy for people to like post the good times, and I kind of get it because like, you know, if you're pissed off or something's ruining your day, like do you really want to go onto social media and share it? So I get that, but you know, with business, I guess anybody that wants to grow to any size, you know, it's going to come with a lot of heartache and struggle, and there's never going to be a an easy route. So I feel like you got to kind of agree that you're willing to push through it no matter what, or else it might not be what you want to do because the stress and the sleepless nights, they're pretty much guaranteed, I would say. I'm sure you've had plenty of them throughout your, you know, throughout your time.
Yeah, I like to say, when I started this, I had no gray hair. Now my head's all gray. So, you and I have talked about this, Alex. It's said in not a lot of different ways, but I think Chris says that work on the business, man, before you work on the business plan. But working on ourselves without, again, I'll use the word cliche, without just being hippy dippy cliche-ish, it's so very important because
Hmm.
as team leaders, we've got to be resilient with the ups and downs, right? I remember I was talking to Kevin up at NFDI a few years ago, and I said, "Hey, man, I know for us, what we've learned is trying to build our business on the valleys, not the peaks, right? You build your business on, oh man, we're doing this, we're going to go buy this, we're going to do this, and then all of a sudden it dips, and now you've got this deficit, right? So you build that sustainable business on the valleys, not the peaks, and then the peaks are just beautiful, right? That sunrise is just that much more beautiful. So, so yeah, I think working on who you are it's got to parallel as you work on your business because you're going to need that resiliency as you get kicked in the shin some days, and then other days you get patted on the back and you take it, you know. Um, keep your head up during the failure and keep your head down during the success, right? And just get after it. But I think a big part of that's working on yourself.
Yeah, and I know I've seen your stories on Facebook. You know, going to the gym seems like you're pretty regular about hitting the gym, and that's what I've found as well. You know, I know Chris says that he's got all kinds of groups and LDX and all that cool stuff. Um, but yeah, that I don't know. I think it's that confidence too. I know you're going in there early morning. A big part for me, a big game changer was like when I was going in. Yeah, I wake up at 4 and I'm at the gym. You know, I'm in the parking lot by like 4:45 ish, and if nobody's really there, you know, that I realized that helped build some confidence. I was like, I'm the only one that's even here in this whole city, and you know, sometimes there's a couple people there, or whatever. But I think that confidence, if you lose it, you gotta find a way to get it back and kind of know what gets that confidence back in you too, because otherwise that valley you said could last way too long. And that's what used to happen to me. It would seem like it would last forever because I didn't think I had any control over it. I would be in this valley, I'd be struggling, and then it would just be kind of something random happen to get me back up, build my confidence. And I think most people don't really know that there are ways to like trigger that. And even though it might suck to wake up and go, like, that's really what's required to feel like you earned it, I guess. You know, feel like you earned that confidence and carry that confidence into whatever you're doing that day with sales or, you know, building decks, fences, whatever. That's kind of how I look at it. I don't know if it's anything similar for you.
Yeah, man. Here's the thing. I truly believe that we've got that inner voice in our heads, right? And I tell my son this and my daughters this, like it's well known. We can't control our first thought always, and sometimes we're not even sure where they come from, but we can certainly control our second. And so it's up to us if we're going to sit and marinate on that first thought. You're not good enough. Go back to bed, whatever it is, right? It's that negative voice that just Andy Frisella calls it, the beep voice, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
everybody calls it something different. But I, what I learned about myself as I got older was I needed accountability, and so I found a guy that would work out with me every morning and would religiously be there. And so we put it together something that said, hey, if I miss a day, I owe him $35, right? Like, and vice versa. And so it keeps us accountable. And he challenged me a few years ago to do a story. And I'm like, man, that's just, I don't know, man. All this. Well, what it's done is it's had a few people that I were friends with, a few people that I've become friends with say, hey, man, I see you. And it's encouraging. I'm like, wow, really? And I know personally I get encouraged by others. And so I'm like, wow, this is not about you, John. It's about actually posting a video, posting a quick story, and if that makes someone roll out of bed and go, then it's all worth it. Like, don't get wrapped up in yourself. It's about something
Yeah.
bigger than that. Others did it for you. Now you, so, yeah, that's what it is. For me, it's accountability, right? And just trying uh, not to adhere to that first thought, that negative thought that tries to break us down all the time. Um, if it's a candle, I tell my son this. If that voice is a candle, snuff it out with a bucket of water, right? Like self-talk it out of there. With a bunch of positive. Because I do believe in the power of the mind, and again, not trying to be rainbows and unicorns here, but like it's the steering wheel, right? Like our mind doesn't know the difference between do and don't. It just knows where our energy flows. That's where it's going. So you gotta stay positive, right? You're riding your bike and you see the tree. If you say, I don't want to hit the tree, guess what you're going to do? You hit the tree. Don't say what you don't want to do. Say what you do want to do. I want to blaze past it. I'm going to go there. I'm going to do this. And so for me, it's been a lot of that, just trying to get my mind right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like that too. I mean, for me, like the action of some sort, like if I'm sitting, like last night, I was sitting on the couch watching something and just negative thoughts, like stuff that was bothering me from work earlier in the day. And um, before I didn't even realize, like, I guess how the mind could work. And, you could just kind of go down a downward spiral. Now I'm aware of it and I'm like, I know I can get out of it. So, like, what I just did, I was like, just kind of called myself a, you know, P word. um, and, it was
Yeah.
just like, get up, I don't even know what the rules are with like cussing and what I set my settings to. So I'm not even sure how it all works.
I just
That's why I'm
didn't
like,
want to. I didn't want to be the first one to cuss, so I beeped it out.
I don't think it's fine. I'm just like, oh man, maybe I didn't change the settings. But anyways, I got up, went and just crushed out a bunch of push-ups and just that, air squats, whatever. There's science behind it. I'm not a scientist, but I've learned from other people, that gets the endorphins going in your brain and, helps you start going on a more positive path versus just sitting there like a, bag of sand in the couch. So,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
seems to work for me. I got to get moving. I got ADD for sure. So I'm always kind of moving around, bouncing around and, getting up and doing something always seems to help me. But
I don't want to. I'll share this from. I mean, this is not my thought. So, I mentioned Andy Frisella. One of the things that he said, and I've listened to him for years, and forgive me for mentioning him twice, but he said
oh, you're
some
good.
golden nuggets, and one of it is, the ultimate hack is personal excellence, right? And what is that? What is that? I think a lot of times people are timid of that. Oh, excellent. What do I think I'm all? Man, it's just being the best version of you, whatever that is, right? And so I would like to think I've always done that, but I haven't. I mean, there were times in my 20s and 30s that I just, I threw call. I didn't care about taking care of myself as much as I should, right? And so it is a hack, so to speak. When your mind's right and your body's right and you're reacting to, you can handle the ups and downs so much better in business. And in today's sedentary world with everything on that phone and everything, we can sit there and anything can be brought to us. And while technology is so great when it's used the right way, it can also damage us using it the wrong way. And so I try to make sure that I still see things that are beautiful, not on the phone, but a sunset, a sunrise, a river flowing through trees, as going hunting and getting in the woods, right? Like those things are tried and true and will always be, right? And so I think getting back to some of those basics for me was real important in being able to offer any value to those people around me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess a healthy way of dealing with it too, I know people kind of, and you can never mention Andy too much. He's like probably the number one guy I would want to meet in the world, to be honest. So somehow this makes it to him. Love a text message from you, Andy. But no, anyways, he was always talking about weight and like eating to kind of get through the pain. I think that's a pretty common one.
Yeah, yeah,
Pretty big addiction people have. And there's all kinds of other vices, obviously drinking, drugs, whatever. But um, yeah, the only thing that seems to be keep me level headed consistently, obviously it's never perfect, but is having that routine in the morning, doing the things, the working out. I've learned great things from Chris Breen and, the stuff he does in the mornings, um, meditation, visualization, it's all stuff, I guess everybody that's a influencer, mentions, but it does work. I'm definitely never going back to the other route. It's helped me tremendously. So, if
Yeah,
any,
it does work, man. I'm drawing a blank on her name, but she wrote a book, and I'm sorry, I'll remember it in a minute or get it to you. But the book is it's about the first 5 minutes that um, your alarm goes off, right? Or the first 5 seconds, right? It's that first initial window of, are you going to win that moment, or are you going to settle back down? And the more we win that moment, we don't hit the snooze. Because when we set the alarm weeks ago, and it goes, or the night before, we determined, when should I get up to get my stuff done. And if we don't, when we hit snooze, we've lost that first battle. When we don't hit snooze and we get rolling, we've won that first battle. I mean, there's a there's a video on YouTube where a general talks about, you want to do something great in life, make your bed every morning. And it's the same idea, that you're winning a battle before you go fight the day, right? And so we just stack wins, right? You can apply this to marketing and sales, right? When you have a client that says yes to things, and you actually are successful in adding value to that, then the ultimate yes of being able to work for them is so much of an easier yes to get to, right? And so for each one of us personally, I think, at least for me, is trying to stack small victories. For you, you just mentioned you're in that state. You went and blew out some push-ups. That was a victory. Getting the mind right, and getting back
Mhm.
into the game, so to speak. And I don't think we give that enough credence and importance. Because quite honestly, it doesn't sell, right? It's starting to, but like, what sells is sitting on the couch and ordering pizza, right? I
Yep.
mean, that's what watching Netflix and getting your Uber Eats on. And last time I looked, that's not really adding. No, don't get me wrong. There's a time and place for everything, but
Yeah.
but that's not something, for me at least personally, that I need to have a whole lot of in my life. Because, man, I can get to that point and do nothing about as good as anybody,
Yeah.
right? I can be a king of doing, like, I can sit and just, and that serves me no good. uh
Yep.
so so yeah.
Yeah. I think everybody can too. I mean, I know I can. I could just sit. I mean, it's all that temptation to sit around and do nothing, just watch Netflix and binge out. I mean, it probably would, for both of us, be pretty hard to get us to sit down and just on a work day to sit down and watch a whole bunch of Netflix. But that's the easy thing. That's what, it seems like you want to do. That's what your mind kind of tells you, like take a little bit of a break, but then nothing good comes from it. Like you said, it just sends you down a path that you don't want to go down and creates bigger problems later. So it's almost like you got to get out in front of it as best you can every day, or else, who knows what could come in and kind of derail who knows
Yep.
what in your life. It could get pretty bad. So,
Yeah, exactly.
but yeah, I know, John, that you got a busy schedule. You got a lot to do. That was everything I wanted to cover. And I think, well, I know that everybody got a lot out of this podcast, and I think they probably got a sneak peek into what I meant in the beginning when I said we just get talking about stuff and all kinds of different topics. So, this is another talk I enjoyed, and
Yeah.
do appreciate you coming on and sharing your wisdom with all of us. And um, going forward with the Fence and Deck Mastery podcast, we will be continuing to do. I've been trying to go after weekly podcasts. I must admit, I've been getting a little sluggish in these past couple weeks as I've been hunting, and no excuses. That's just really what it is. But going forward, I'm trying to get more and more people on here. We have Deck Expo coming up, so if anybody's going to that, we'd love to see you there. I think our booth is 5005, and we're doing speaking engagement, and actually have a book that I just finished writing like 2 days ago. So I'm going to have that at the booth as well. So if you want a free copy, feel free to come by and check that out. And that's kind of about it. If you did like the show, I'm sure you got a lot of value from it. It would be great if you can leave a review or subscribe to the podcast, so we can climb the rankings a little bit. But that's about it. With the podcast, on the marketing side, if you do have any questions about your marketing, with your website, getting more leads, getting a better foothold in your market, reach out to us. Happy to give you a free audit and kind of show you where you're at, show you your rankings, and see if there's a way that we could work together, if there's a way that we could help, that kind of thing. And I will be sending out emails for a webinar we have next week. If you want to check that out as well, we're going to be talking about some ads, and I believe it's on pay-per-click ads. So we'll be going into a lot of detail there. But that's it, John. Appreciate it again for coming on here. Thanks for joining the show, and loved having you on here. And we'll be talking soon.
Yeah, Alex, appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Yep. Take care.
All right, you too. Bye bye.